Have you ever thought, why don't they teach that in school? As a teacher of 23 years myself, I noticed that students had less and less of some of the basic skills they needed for everyday life. You know, things like how to write a thank you note, how to make a phone call, how to apologize, how to write a check and balance your account, how to sew on a button, how to clean the bathroom and vacuum and do laundry, how to operate a fire extinguisher, how to turn off the water to the house. And thus, Adulting 101 was born. You can go to jamesdevine.net, click on the Adulting 101 course link, and take a view of a few free lessons. And if you like what you see, sign up for the full course, and you can get 30% off as a Cool Grandpa listener. Just enter the code COOLGRANDPA at checkout.
Hey folks, I want to talk to you about this application Readio. I strongly recommend Readio to help grandparents and parents read to their grandchildren remotely when they can't be in the same room. Whether you're living across the country, across the world, or you're just gone on a business trip, Readio makes it easy for you to read to those young ones when you're away. It's a super easy tool that allows for video monitoring across the top of the screen so they can see you and you can see them, as well as having the book prominently displayed, making it easy for you to read to those young ones, or better yet, having them read to you. What I want you guys to do is go to cool-grandpa.us, look for the affiliate link for Readio, click on that link, and sign up today for your free trial. Hello, and welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is your host, Greg Payne, coming at you from Studio 12. This podcast is about being the best possible grandpa you can be, focusing on what it is to be a grandpa and how we can all share that experience together for our grandchildren. Welcome in. This is going to be another one of those one-on-one conversations that you and I get to have, and I get to tell you a little bit about what's going on in my head, which can be a bit scary at times, so I admit that. But think about me. I've got to live here 24/7. But what I am happy about is that some of these thoughts and ideas are things that I believe you can think about, that you can put into practice, that you can absorb. So what I want to do is kick off our conversation with a quote from Christopher Walken. Forget about my voice. Forget about what you're hearing. You've got to put on either your best Christopher Walken impersonation, or you've got to channel Christopher Walken for this, because I can't listen to his quotes and what he does without hearing all the awesome comedians that do him, and then also just him. So here's a quote that's going to lead us off today. I'm in a place in my life where I get offered parts that I didn't get offered before. Fathers and uncles and grandfathers and so on. And it took me a long time to get to that place, but I'm glad because it opens up new territory. That's the end of the quote. What I'm happy about too with this quote is that it fits so well with this idea of taking on new roles that maybe we haven't thought about. You know, life gets going. We're just in the flow. We're in the current. I think sometimes there's big dramatic rituals. There's big dramatic things that happen in our lives. Some of those rituals are going to be turning 12 or 13 and having a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. You're going through and you maybe get your arrow of light if you're in Scouts, you know, moving from Cub Scouts and earning that arrow of light as you're starting to go into Boy Scouts. You could be receiving Eagle Scout Award. A driver's license is a great one. Turning 18 is a big one. 21, getting married, graduating from college or high school. And there's other things that mark when we start new phases of our lives, or we take on new and interesting roles in our lives. You know, certainly having children is one of those, and having a grandfather for the first time hold those grandkids, or find out the news that they're going to be a grandpa, or even that, your kids are going through certain phases of their lives. These are all new roles. But I think as we get older, we don't often recognize that these things are happening to us, right? The promotions might start slowing down at work, especially as you start to head into your middle, upper level management, your senior whatever. The idea of taking on new roles really starts to slow down for us when we hit kind of our 40s, 50s, 60s. And I think what we do is we kind of shortchange ourselves a little bit and not thinking about these new roles that we take on. I mean, certainly, like I said, when you get the news that you're becoming a grandfather, wow, that's a new role that you get offered in life, right? When you become an uncle, when you become a father to adults, not many of us think about that. Think about when you've got little kids running around and you've got these ankle biters and these the curtain climbers. You've got these kids. Then the next thing you know, you're into those high school years. And you don't really know that your role has really shifted. You're still a parent, but you're a parent to a different type of individual. And then as we're older and the kids get out of the house, hopefully, and start to get married or have kids, I should say, we don't often remember or realize that we are being offered parts that didn't come to us before. And this is part of the aging process, right? This is part of gaining wisdom. This is part of, being on the right side of the turf. We get the opportunity as grandfathers to experience roles that we couldn't possibly have been offered beforehand. Now, what I want to do is think about some of these roles that were being offered and have you start to think of these things in a different light. Think about some of the interests that you're diving back into. As the kids get out of the house, as you find some more disposable income, as your income may even be rising with some of these promotions, and as you start to get into your vice presidents and directors and senior level, whatever that role is, you start to be able to find money for a wood shop, or you start to find money for traveling, or you start to find money to go buy a Jeep. So these aren't just necessarily things that happen to you, but they're roles that you take on. You're now a Jeep enthusiast. So what does that role look like? Are you beginning that role? Are you starting to get into mastery of that role? Are you starting to be able to teach and help other people that are sharing that interest and hobby? What are some of the other things that you're able to take on in this stage of your life? It may be going back in and becoming a scoutmaster again, maybe for the first time, maybe for the second time. Maybe you're now the president of your high school booster club because you've got time to take that on. You know how that role should work. The other part of this too is that we have to think about when we are taking on new roles, especially as grandfathers. How does that look like? Because so many of us have become a little bit more isolated as we get older. And that doesn't mean that we don't have friends, that we don't have people that we talk to. But with so many of us working from home or working remotely now, when we start to take on these roles, it's important to remember that we need to seek out support. Now, that support could just mean somebody that's further along in an interest and hobby from you. I like to whitewater kayak. So I'm always seeking people to give me some input on my kayaking. And this isn't every trip, and certainly with whatever you're doing, it's not every activity. But we are looking for support. We're looking for people that have been there, that are at least a step or two ahead of us, that we perceive as experts, but they perceive as just being there. The other part of this too is we want to build out that network. We want to build out who these people are in our lives and in our relationships that can help us with our new roles. If it's a grandfather, reach out to other grandfathers. Have real discussions about being a grandpa. Don't just show pictures of what happened over the last weekend, but really get in and talk about it. How's your grandkid doing? What's going on? How are you supporting them? Because you're going to be able to get ideas, and then you're going to be able to open up to those people and support them as well. The other part of this too is be sure to dive in for more education. I am loving the fact that I've got time now to sit down and really dive into topics that are fascinating to me. I am diving into some of the ancient Roman history. I'm learning about the times before Julius Caesar and what led up to Julius Caesar and how the Roman Republic really died and changed with the coming of Augustus. The other part too is I'm diving into ancient Greek history, more or less focused on Philip II and Alexander, and then what came after Alexander. But understanding these things has been really enlightening to me, and I'm able to pull those ideas and pull those examples into these new roles that I have. And it's not that I'm going into any kind of a new organization and I'm wanting to, start to talk to people about sarissas and that we need to lengthen our spears and how we're going to take over. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about how those relationships were built. What was going on with people that I can relate to today with what has already gone on before. And that's just a personal example for me. Some other parts where it's education is dive in and watching YouTube videos about woodworking or about working with metal. Maybe you want to take up carving, and that's a great hobby and something that you can certainly pass on to grandkids. But as we take on these roles, let's not be afraid to dive in and learn more. I think we've got a fascinating and a great opportunity in this day and age to have access to more information than our grandparents did. I certainly don't have a set of Encyclopedia Britannica on my bookshelf anymore, but I've got the internet. Plus, I've got a number of different education resources. There's lynda.com, right? The LinkedIn learning portals. There's so many other learning portals that you can jump into. And some of those are for purely entertainment, and then some of those can help you with your career and can help you with your hobby. So as we get older, let's not be afraid to jump out and get some more education about these roles that we're taking on in our lives. And then the last thing I want to talk to you about is this idea of rebranding yourself. Now, rebranding yourself can be a challenge sometimes because the people that know us most know us as a particular individual. It's really hard sometimes to break out of those roles. You may be the class clown. You may be studious. You may be so many different things. But because people like to put labels to individuals and situations, and I did a podcast about labels, we find that too with our relationships and with what I'm calling branding ourselves. As we change, as we evolve, as we get older, as we develop new interests, as we take on new roles, we've got to be cautious and careful about rebranding ourselves. But I want you to rebrand yourself. I don't want you to be the same person today as you were at 35. I don't want you to have the same strengths and weaknesses. Hopefully you've got new strengths and weaknesses. The weaknesses may not always change so much, but hopefully you've developed some new interests that have created some new strengths for you. There's all this technology out there. There's no reason not to have increased yourself in your knowledge in the world or particular interests. So as we go about rebranding ourselves, start thinking in terms of what it is you want to be or want to be known as. And this doesn't mean that I don't want to be known as a grandfather. Certainly do. But I want to be known as a grandfather that is working hard to learn about this role. That's why I started the podcast. I want to know more about being a cool grandfather by talking to other cool grandfathers. I want to learn more about being a cool grandfather by talking to people about their cool grandpas. So I'm trying to rebrand myself a little bit in terms of being much more action-oriented when it comes to this role of being a grandfather. I'm also working hard to try to rebrand myself in other areas of my life. For example, I just spent 2 of my vacation days and a chunk of money going to a speaking conference. This conference wasn't so much to teach me how to put together a keynote address, but it was teaching me about the business of public speaking. It was teaching me methods that I could use to start to market myself and market a message. And this is something that's going to take a little bit of time because people don't know me as being a speaker or wanting to be out there and speaking about leadership, especially around leadership with this role of grandfather, right? Over the next months, I'm going to be working to rebrand myself a little bit. And I want you to think about areas in your life where you need to rebrand yourself. And maybe need isn't the right word. Maybe it's more so that you're feeling more fulfilled, that you're showing people different areas of yourself and showing people that you're growing. You're not the same person you were 5 years ago. You're not the same person you were 10 years ago or 12 years ago. So rebranding can definitely take some effort because we're fighting against everybody's preconceived ideas of who we are, what we are, as well as just the history of who we've been. I mean, let's face it. If you were known as a goofball in high school and college, there was a reason you were known as a goofball in high school and college. And working hard to get past that is going to be something that takes some effort and it's going to take some time. So what I want you guys to do is really think about this new role that you're taking on. And it may be a new role of being a grandparent, or maybe it's a new role of being an aunt or an uncle, or maybe it's a new role of being a parent to adult kids and thinking differently about being a parent to adult kids. Maybe it's being, volunteering for an assistant coach at the high school and diving back into your passion about baseball. Or maybe it's stepping into a role of being an author and looking to express your message, your lessons learned, something that you're passionate about. But it's going to take effort to really train up yourself and think about yourself in a new role as it is going to be to get other people, close friends, families, to think about you in that new light. I want you guys embrace this new role, whatever that new role is. Don't be afraid of it. I want you guys to make sure that you're seeking out support for that new role. What are you reading? What are you listening to? Where are you searching on? Who are you talking to about the new role that you want to really make a part of you? And then work on rebranding yourself. And this is definitely something about thinking about yourself in different terms. Once you start thinking about yourself in different terms, you can start presenting yourself differently to friends and family. And don't be afraid to challenge them if they're still thinking of you in old terms. Now, that doesn't mean start arguments, but it does mean, hey, I'm not just this person, but I'm this person plus whatever that role is. So it's just something to think about, and I appreciate you guys letting me talk. Let me know what you guys are thinking about in terms of your new role. Shoot me an email at greg@cool-grandpa.com, or go to the show notes for this episode and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear what new role you're taking on and how you're going about taking on that role so that it does become a new part of you. So until next time, be sure to stay cool. Thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend. That's the best way you can help us to expand our community, as well as get the news out about how valuable grandpas are in the lives of those kids. If you'd like to leave me a comment or shoot me a potential topic for this podcast, please go to www.cool-grandpa.us. Look for the comments tab, fill it out, hit submit. It's as easy as that. Until next time, remember to stay cool.